So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Jackson with Jackson number 41. First things first, we have a Dapper as a professional drink because I did in fact leave Jackson's mic unmuted during the pre-show for just a bit. It wasn't there the whole time. I mean, it was most of the time, but whatever. I'm going to take a drink. I am drinking a Dark and Stormy, which I have not sufficiently stirred, so that was mostly just rum. Jackson, how you doing?
I'm okay. I'm drinking a Coca-Cola.
Okay. That sounds pretty good. So, we are, of course, here to take a look at Charles Jackson. But you know, it's he's been very, very dumb. And the most recent thing he's told us is that there just isn't enough time for the mutations to accumulate between chimpanzees and humans. And of course, he's basing this off of the waiting time problem that people like John Sanford and Robert Carter like to talk about. And Jackson, on a scale of flat Earth to 10, how plausible is the waiting time problem as a problem for human common ancestry, chimpanzees?
Plausible? I mean, it's like you have to know a little bit of evolution to understand why it's wrong.
No, you don't have to. I'm not asking you how much you need to understand to know that it's wrong. I'm asking you how plausible it is objectively on a scale of flat Earth.
Like
to
flat
10.
Earth, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe a 1. Wait, is flat Earth 0 or is flat Earth 1?
Flat Earth is flat Earth. I don't understand what the question means.
Okay, I give it a mostly flat Earth.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. Real Gatubella for $2 says Riposti fi. I'm gonna go Genasi Borgia's boob. Borgia's. Is this Maltese? Am I getting more Maltese? I feel like I'm getting more Maltese. We'll take a drink because one of our drink triggers is, of course, anyone who says anything that roughly corresponds to A answers in Genesis or AIG or a bag of dicks. Take a drink. All right, so we should probably go through the drinking rules. Now that we're here. Oh, Hungarian? Julian San Andreas Fountain Wren says Hungarian. Maltese. Yep, Maltese is getting a few more votes there, so it's probably Maltese. I think Maltese is the only language I know of that puts like a dot over Z. And I'm actually not positive that I know that it does that. I just feel like I've seen it do that. And yes, it is Maltese. And I actually don't know what the Z with dot over it is indicating. Is it indicating like dark consonant? Like Fad in standard Arabic? Okay. Who translates says answers in Genesis is a bag of raisins. We're not opening the raisins discussion. The raisins discussion. Look, the raisins discussion came up over on Chesh's server today, and I am not getting into the raisins discussion. There's a whole discussion about raisins and Arabic, if you don't know. We're not doing it today.
I do not know about Arabic. That kind of reminded me how my favorite idiom in French is "je n'ai pas un radis," which means I don't have any radishes, which means I don't have any money. But I like that they say radishes instead of money.
Yeah. Rail Gatabella says Maltese is related to Arabic. I would argue that it is just another language of Arabic because the idea that Arabic is a language is silly. It is a whole bunch of languages. Like Arabic in I don't know, Morocco versus Arabic in Iraq. They're not the same language. They're about as different as like Romanian and Spanish. They're not the same language. Sorry. They're descended from a single language, just like Romanian and Spanish. But yeah, they're... Anyway, so we're going to take a look at this video by Charles Jackson. And in this video, of course, we will be playing and we will have some drinking. Now, we've already seen a couple of them. If I screw up the production, for instance, I forget to unmute Jackson, or I forget to unmute me, or I switch the wrong scene, or something like that, then in fact, that is what we call a Dapper as a professional, and we take a drink for that. Also, if Dr. Charles Jackson here says something that's so stupid, we just kind of have to drink. Yeah, we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if he said something that's actually true, but it's not something that he's just quoting from somewhere else. He actually has to have the information in his brain and then say it. And yeah, then we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if he tells any jokes that don't land or tells a story that doesn't happen. That one's a bit of a judgment call, but hey, none of this matters actually. The drink numbers are just there for funsies. In fact, the entire game is there for funsies. If you don't want to play along, that's fine. If you want to play along with something other than alcohol, that's fine. If you want to play along with, juice, water, tea, coffee, soda, vape pen, high fiving the person sitting next to you, I don't know, whatever. It's up to you. Eating a chip, I don't care. It can even be a hot chip. Fine. Yeah, just, this is for fun. But if you do play with something intoxicating, be careful. Don't go drive, text your ex, operate heavy machinery, fly airplane. Just, you know your limits. Anyway, if Dr. Charles Jackson also mentions the that political group that became really, really popular in Germany in like the late 30s into the 40s, and that has become increasingly popular here in the former United States, I would take a drink for that. We will also, or their various atrocity or various people associated with that party, whether as prominent members or leaders or whatever. Take a drink for that. If Jackson, good Jackson here, or I, can successfully predict what Charles Jackson, bad Jackson, is going to say, where it's not very clear, then we will take a drink for a successful prediction. Also, as you guys have already seen, if you guys super chat or membership milestone chat anything, the fact that answers in Genesis are a bag of dicks, we'll take a drink. We will also take a drink if any of you super chat or membership milestone chat anything with the Godzilla or Mothra or Ghidorah emojis, which are exclusive to channel members. So you have to be a channel member if you want one of those. Let's see. We will also take a drink for each gifted membership. So the quickest way to make me much, much more tipsy is to just gift a lot of memberships. Yeah. So we got a few more super chats in here. Lieutenant Math the Navigator for $4.99 says, has Dr. Jackson managed to get that obstruction out of his sphincter? Further examination suggests it's, let's see. It may be maybe his cranium. No, as far as I know, that obstruction is still firmly lodged within his, Royal Gatabella for $2 says, oh, okay. La pensée en Genesis est un sac de bite. And thank you very much. We will. I'd see if I actually thought it was French. Because one of the problems is, like, you start reading a Romance language, they all have a pretty similar set of, like, how things are spelled. But that doesn't mean they're pronounced the same. So, like, you gotta be careful. Written Spanish and written French are way more similar than spoken Spanish and spoken French. Which is why, if you can read one of them pretty well, you can probably figure out a written text in the other one, but that does not extend to understanding spoken phrases and languages. Not at all.
Nor does being able to read French mean that you can understand a single thing the French are saying.
That's often true. Yeah. Yeah.
They're not even trying. It's like they saw a French. Actuellement.
Also, French has spoken French has largely dropped the entirety of the first person plural. Just don't bother with it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why not?
Instead, they just use the third person singular pronoun on. So, like,
okay. Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Let's give it
like
to them,
in
I
French
guess.
class, you'll learn things like, oh, to say we live here, you can say nous habitons ici. Like, no.
Mm-hmm.
The actual French people are going to say on habite ici.
Okay.
No one's going to say nous habitons.
Sure, why not?
Mm-hmm. French is weird like that. Let's see. All right, so yeah, we're gonna jump into this. We started a little bit late because someone has a job.
Someone has 3 jobs.
Jackson, you should just have a whole bunch of generational wealth so that you don't need jobs.
Dapper, have you ever seen those memes? That's like me being an idiot baby in 2002 instead of buying a house.
Yeah.
I love those memes so much. They're just so good. Me refusing to purchase land by being like 2, you know?
Yeah, what an idiot I was not to buy a house back in like 19.
Yeah, come on, Dapper. What were you thinking?
I know.
Come on.
I really
Should've invested.
I should have bought like 4 or 5 and just rented most of them out. That's the real
Yeah.
maneuver.
I actually said to I was talking to my students about Mendelian inheritance today, and I said, well, they're basically in the 1800s. There were essentially 2 ways to be able to afford to go to school or to go to like higher education, like college. They're the equivalent, and the ways were be born rich or go into the clergy.
Yeah, that's you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I got some chuckles out of the students, so it was worth it.
Also, in case anyone is curious, at 96% on the funding thing, Bent gets free pizza.
Yay, pizza!
Which also means I get some pizza, because I order me pizza when we get there too. So,
Nice.
we can get to 96%, we get free pizza. And if we get 4% beyond that, then I get to have a poll for you guys to select the next fancy avatar that I use in a video. So,
Nice.
that's always nice. And also, I am probably going to have to start saving for some pretty expensive hardware upgrades. Because October is coming fast. And I'm probably going to need at least a new motherboard by October. But I'm also probably going to start needing to replace things like hard drives, and possibly even a graphics card, which at that point, it's basically like, okay, well, then you're basically just buying a new. Which might mean that's what I end up doing. So, you want to help me out, feel free to super chat. All right. Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I will ever be.
Okay. Here is Bad Jackson.
That lets, if DNA changes at a fairly regular rate, that lets scientists use this rate to calibrate a molecular clock. If it was true, yeah, it would, whose tick-tocks measure how long ago a genetic change occurred.
So the thing is, within a lineage, it's actually measurably fairly consistent, but across lineages, it's not very consistent. So if we're trying to figure out like the divergence time between 2 known lineages, it's actually not that hard to do. And it's experimentally verifiable that there's variance, but it's not huge. So he's just wrong to say, well, it's not constant. It's not constant across all of biota, like all of life forms, but it's pretty consistent within certain lineages, such that, yeah, we can do this, actually. Is it ever going to be as consistent as, like, things that are determined directly by physics, like spontaneous nuclear decay? No, but it's not like those things help them either. We got a couple things here. Sapphire Light, formerly known as Fade to Gray, thank you very much, who's been a member for 34 months. His amulet level says, AIG is a sickening sack of soggy summer sausages soaking in soilage. Gross. Take a drink for it, though. And then Flavius Josephus, the 1st century Jewish historian, for $5, says, I am a simple man. I see an eggplant, I think of AIG. We'll take a drink for that, too. Thank you very much. All right, let me update the donations thing here. Here we go.
If it was true, but watch, next. Dr. Milford Walpuff at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor said
That's a man with 2 last names. And no first name.
Milford Walpuff.
It doesn't matter, but those are both last names as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
I turn
it's the hand you're dealt, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to turn myself up. I'm going to double check, make sure everything's on the right device. I don't know why it would be low. It's weird. Let's see. I think that's a little bit better. Let me know if that's a little bit better.
2004 in Science News magazine, those...
Yes. The peer-reviewed journal Science News. Has Charles Jackson... I mean, he has a doctorate, right? At some point,
yes.
he's got to have had to read peer-reviewed literature, right?
You would think so.
So he knows what the difference is. He knows that it's not appropriate to cite this stuff to establish things in science, right?
Yes.
Okay, so can we safely conclude that he's just being intellectually dishonest?
I would say yes.
Okay.
who use mitochondrial DNA to reconstruct animals' evolutionary histories assume that its chemical sequence changes only at random. But mounting evidence indicates that natural selection molds the makeup of mitochondrial DNA, making such analyses what? Useless.
Okay, so this
That doesn't address
this
the
is
point.
not. Yeah, this does not address the argument. So okay, so actually, I just did a video fairly recently on this very topic. It was called "The Velvet Worm's Tale," where we talk about molecular clocks. So your genome, there are different regions of your genome, right? There are some regions that are protein coding genes and genes that are, for regulation of other genes. Then there are regions that, as far as we're aware, don't do anything at all. Okay, so you want if you're doing a molecular clock, you want to pick a genetic region that is not being subject to natural selection. Because if it is being subject to natural selection, it may change really quickly or really slowly, right? But if it is a region that is accumulating mutations at a background rate, that's the one you want to use, right? It's for that reason that you pick those certain regions, because they're not being subject to natural selection. So the idea that natural selection invalidates the molecular clock doesn't make any sense. It just means that if you want to do it, you have to pick a particular region of the genome, which, okay, yeah, and like,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's a problem.
Plus, nothing about this is about like the rate of molecular clocks, which is what he was claiming. He was saying molecular clocks don't tick at consistent rates. Well, okay, but why would you cite someone saying that basically mitochondrial DNA is too widely subject to selection to accumulate mutations at the molecular rate? Like, it's... I'm just very confused, right?
Yeah, I don't really know what he's trying to get at with this.
It's like if I tried to argue that like, oh, the Yankees are the best baseball team ever, and then you came at me with like the running yard stats for the Eagles. Like, that's not even the same sport, man. What are you talking about? Who cares? What difference does it make? I'm taking another drink. This is just bafflingly dumb. Like, I disagree with Mr. Wilfred Wolpoff, as does like the scientific community at large, because these ideas have not actually taken root. It turns out that these ideas have not become the consensus. But like, even if I agreed with, I guess, Dr. Wolpoff, it wouldn't matter. Nothing is relevant here. Very confused.
Useless. Watch the scientific community with me. You know, what Dr. Schwartz is saying, what Dr. Wolpoff is saying, what these new discoveries are coming up with, what the literature is saying, what the...
You've never given us any bit of the literature, Dr. Jackson. That actually annoys me. I'll be honest, it pisses me off, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to tell me, watch the literature, you need to have actually some indication that you're even capable of doing that. When he cites Scientific American, National Geographic, Science News, like, and then says, you better watch the literature. What does he think the literature is? Because it's nothing that he cited. Like, Jackson, you and I do a fair bit of watching the literature. You and I read papers that are actually in peer-reviewed literature about the subjects that we're interested in or studying. Hell, sometimes I have to read peer-reviewed papers about subjects I'm not interested in and would rather not study. Like, the random geology of some Mexican island that's only published in Spanish. I had to do that for a video. You think I wanted to? No. That was kind of nightmarish. But
Interesting.
yeah, well, it was... Cindy Lincoln had made some weird claims about some island, so I had to look up the geology of the island, and the only place I could find it was in one Mexican Spanish-language geology journal.
You know what, Dapper? That's actually... The funny thing about this is that really fundamentally is the difference between us and him. I was talking with Camilla about this just this morning. You and I probably like never read, like, we don't stop at just reading like a magazine or a report of something. We're like, no, I'm gonna go read the paper for myself, and I'm gonna go see what it says.
Yep.
like I was actually, so the book that I'm reading right now mentions a New York Times article, and I was like, okay. So I went to the New York Times article to try to see if they linked the actual, like, it was a report from the CIA report they were talking about, and I couldn't find the CIA report. I was like, I don't really want to read the New York Times' coverage of this. I want to read the report myself.
Yeah.
Because that's what in that case, it's what the literature is. We are always going to the literature. If you go to our videos, if you go to the citations, the sources on our videos, we're always linking technical paper after technical paper after technical paper.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do also
never does that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't only link to technical sources. I will also link to popular sources if that's something that's relevant. But I'm also going to link the actual real article. Right?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I think a part of it is, so Jackson, you know how you and RJ found that generally speaking, creationists ignore about 90% of the data relevant to any topic they bother to touch upon.
Yeah.
It's part of the same deal, right? They don't want to have to deal with the data because the data they're not just inconvenient, they're catastrophic, right?
Yes.
Like there is. All right, we have a super chat from Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $4.99 who says, "Is the literature in the room with us right now?" Yeah, basically. And like it's baffling to me. Well, it's not baffling. It's onerous. It's very upsetting. It's annoying. It's hypocritical when creationists say things like, "It's not that we have different evidence. We all have the same evidence. It's just a difference of interpretation." It's like, here's the thing, right? It is true in one sense that the same evidence is available to everyone to go look at. That's true, right? But when you say that there's just as much evidence that creationists are using as there is for anyone else, it's just literally not true. It's mathematically been demonstrated to not be true.
Yes.
Like, and if you want, sorry.
RJ and I wrote a whole book on it, and we're writing the second one.
And the thing is, if you want to confirm this for yourself, the simplest thing to do is just look at a baromenology paper, right? And look at how many organisms, how many taxa are included in a baromenological study by creationists versus how many would be included in a phylogenetic analysis of that same group of animals or whatever other thing. They always do animals, so I'm just going to say animals.
Right.
In an actual phylogenetics paper. Because creationists love to leave things out. And oddly enough, it's the things that specifically tend to indicate that the group under consideration that they want to be a quote-unquote baramin or a created kind is in fact not isolated and unrelated to other things, but that in fact it does in fact have common ancestry, other groups, which they want to say are in other baramins, which is a word I really hate, by the way.
It is a weird word.
So they pretend that it's from Hebrew, right? But like, words they give as the etymology are bara, mean, and bara means created, but it doesn't mean created in the sense of like the passive participle that you could apply to a noun as an adjective. It literally means he created. And because Hebrew goes verb, subject, object, and there's no direct object marker on mean, the phrase bara mean means a kind created. If you wanted to say he created a kind, you could say bara et mean, because et is the direct object marker. And if you wanted to say like created kind, I think it's something like okay, don't quote me on this. Kip will probably yell at me later. So will Vishanti, but I think it's closer to like mean livro, something like that. Mean livro. If I remember correct, I'm trying to think of like what's the participle form of bara. I don't know enough Hebrew to actually know that with any confidence, but I know that I'm at least trying. I know not to just use the third person singular masculine past tense form of the verb as if it's a passive participle. I know that. I've got a couple more things to read here. Hiroshima Shards of Nanoglass Handler Keller for $4.99 says AIG is a sopping sack of Comcats that auto-enable features that hijack all traffic. Damn. Take a drink for that. Dutch Mammoths never saw Snow Tunicate, who's been a member for 10 months and is at the Tetchpod level, says, at least they don't think 45 degrees is hypotenuse. Oh, flat earthers. Was that Ficatzoid who said that 45 degrees was the hypotenuse? I feel like it was Ficatzoid.
I don't know.
Are you familiar with Ficatzoid, formerly Flatzoid?
I don't think so.
Oh, he's a South African flirt, which is always weird when there's a flirt from the southern hemisphere, because it's like
That is a little odd, yeah.
the sun goes the exact wrong direction in the sky for you, dude. What are you doing? Like everything in the sky rotates the opposite direction the flat Earth predicts. How are you a flat earther in the southern hemisphere? Basically,
I mean, how are their creationists still around today? You know.
to be fair though, like the amount of work it takes for an average Joe to disprove creationism is significantly more than it is for the average Joe to disprove like flat Earth, right? Anyone who can make a call to a different country and who has ever seen the sunset can just right there, as long as it's a country in a different time zone. That's all you need to confirm that the Earth isn't flat, is to have seen a sunset and to be able to call someone in a significantly different time zone. That's it. So, yeah. Anyway, all right, here we go.
Popular media is reporting to what's happening in the scientific world. A new paradigm, like the New York Times said in June, is coming in evolution. They might not even call it evolution.
Okay, a new paradigm has been coming in evolution for like 30 years.
At least
now.
20 years.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe 30.
Yeah, I think it's closer to 30, but it's at least, you're right, it's at least 20, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as like the crisis in evolution that's going to mean that evolution is going to be overturned anytime now.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't happen. Right? Like it has never happened. It's not going to happen. And they just keep saying.
I mean, it's functionally no different from like the world is going to end, next week. It's like the end times preachers. It's really functionally the exact same.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very annoying. And the thing is, because of where it's coming from, right? Because it's coming from like a person who people think is has some authority, a religious leader, they keep believing it, and it keeps not being true. Yeah. Oh, hey, Vishanti's here. Mean isn't used without a preposition like oh. So like I want to say a created kind of animal. We say like mean the behema something like that. I don't know. I don't speak Hebrew. I'm just trying a little bit more than any of the creationists are, right? Which is 0. They just looked up some words in Hebrew and saw the gloss and then just thought that Hebrew grammar was exactly the same as English grammar. Which, spoiler alert, no, it's not. No language has grammar identical to English. Except English, I suppose. So, yeah. Also, what we haven't done in a while is a new emoji. And I want to see how many members we actually need, because YouTube is lying to me and saying we need 19 more members to get 22 emojis, except that we have 25. So, they're just lying to me. So, we're going to see about that. But we're going to hit play.
But it certainly won't be Darwin's theory. Darwin's not feeling very well. You see, next.
It hasn't been Darwin's theory in like a century and a half or something. Right? Like, I'm not kidding.
Yeah. The neo-Darwinism, as in incorporating the Weismann barrier, was in the 1890s. So yeah, if we're saying like what, I mean, gosh, I guess if you say that like the original version of evolution is just Darwinism, right? Then yeah, within like 40 years, 30, 40 years, whatever, like it was no longer the original version. It included the Weismann barrier, so you had the neo-Darwinians, and then shortly thereafter you had, the debate between the mutationists and the Darwinists, and so on and so on. So yeah, it's been a very long time.
Yeah. All right. So I did figure out, according to the internet, how many members we need to get to another emoji. And it's a lot, but I think we could do it. Maybe not tonight, but I think we could do it over the next couple months or so. So here's what I'm going to say. Let's try to get there, right? So right now I have, according to Let's see. According to YouTube stats, I have 331 members right now, which is amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. But to get to one more emoji, we need 600. Which means right now we need 269. We're definitely not getting there today. But let's see what we can do. Let's try to, it only costs $1 if you want to join. It's $5 per gifted membership. I want to see us get a new emoji. And then we can have a poll as to what the new emoji can be. It'd be a lot of fun. Let's read a few things here. Let's see. Lieutenant Math Navigator for $4.99 says, Young Earth creationist predictions are roughly as accurate as Millerite predictions. Yeah, about as accurate as Millerite predictions. And also have a lot in common with Millerite predictions. It's probably not a coincidence that the first Young Earth creationists in the modern sense were Millerites in the form of Seventh-day Adventists.
Yeah. Isn't that wacky? Like, their prediction, the Millerite prediction failed, and yet Young Earth creationism is the, quote, intellectual descendant of the Millerite movement. Like, that's so funny.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. Kerry Bronson, who's been a member for 46 months since at the Amulet level, says, can someone show up outside his house in a bedsheet ghost with a beard? Ooh, evolution! Ooh! I mean, he'd be scared out of his mind.
Right. Chucky Darwin? Is that you?
Yeah, right? And,
in 1998, National Geographic reported on the Australopithecus africanus, that one that was after the Lucy fossil by 1 million years and yet was more chimpy than Lucy. And
what do you mean, and yet?
No.
Even if it's true, which it's not, like, that doesn't mean anything in particular. Evolution hasn't, like, orthogenesis, which is what this, having a later organisms have a larger number of primitive features, is only contradictory of the orthogenetic idea of evolution, where evolution basically has like a linear momentum. So all of the hominins were all evolving towards human-like conditions throughout the entire history of that lineage. There was no, like, branching out into different niches. There was no going back and forth in terms of any characteristic. There was no retention of more basal characteristics by some lineages. None of that, according to orthogenesis. So, you know what, Charles Jackson, if you want to say orthogenesis has been falsified by paleontology, I'm with you on that. But that's not evolution as a whole. That's just one long discarded version of evolution. When I say long discarded, I mean like, this was popular in like the 1920s?
Yeah.
It's been like a century since the idea of like orthogenesis was kind of ditched because it didn't match the evidence. So, yeah.
Here's, not only did they say, well, evolution must have gone backwards, but they also said this next.
Nope.
Here's a picture.
No one ever said that. What they said was that perhaps some lineages retained more basal features later on. That's it. Which, yeah, that happens. In fact, if you want to think about it, think about, like, say, tetrapods. Does it violate evolution that there are still tetrapods who have to lay their eggs in water and use external fertilization, which is the basal condition, as opposed to the derived condition, which allows eggs to be laid on land or retained within the body, and using internal fertilization, as we find in amniotes? No, it's not a contradiction to evolution. The existence of amphibians is the problem for evolution, which is basically what he's saying.
Comparing the Lucy, this is a male Australopithecus afarensis, the Lucy species, and then 1 million years later came Australopithecus africanus, at least they say it was 1 million years, and notice the longer arms, the shorter legs. This is much more chimpy and ape-like.
No, they're both 100% ape-like. I'm going to take a drink. You can't be any more ape-like than an ape, and those are both apes. It's like asking which kind of dog is the most dog. Doesn't make any sense.
Much less human-like, even though 1 million years of evolutionary progress has occurred. But look,
evolution isn't a progressive thing. It's just adaptation to environments and random genetic drift. That's all it is. Evolution doesn't have a goal except maximizing fitness in the local environment. It doesn't have foresight. Doesn't even have hindsight. Can't plan. It doesn't have goals. It's not moving towards some ultimate end. It's not a conscious being. None of those things.
Look at one of the other explanations besides, well, maybe evolution went backwards. Here's the other one. Next. Berger thinks that it's more likely, however,
Presumably Lee Berger.
instead of evolution going backwards,
Not
that
hamburger.
the two
No, probably not.
species evolved separately.
Yeah, as species are wont to do. I'm taking a drink for him saying this. Oh, species evolve separately. What a crazy idea. Yeah, that's just evolution, man.
You're telling me that these different separate species went down separate evolutionary paths? That's so crazy. I never would have considered this.
Yeah, it's... Who could ever have possibly foreseen the idea that maybe speciation might result in different species, not all of which are ancestral to some later extant species? Kent Sarcopterygian Helicopterian Halstead for $9.99 US says, tell me, Dr. Freeman Jackson, if you can, have you destroyed, accommodated so much? What is it exactly have predicted? Can you name even one thing? I thought not. Thank you very much. Alright, here we go.
The most probable idea is that Afarensis and Africanus, that's Lucy and the Africanus, are sister species that share a missing link ancestor. And National Geographic goes on to say, if so...
I hate the phrase missing link ancestor. It's a stupid and awkward phrase. And also, once again, maybe don't cite National Geographic. Maybe
Right,
cite the
so,
literature.
What he's like, what he's going for is like maybe they share a common ancestor that we have yet to discover. Which again, yeah, missing link is a horrible phrase, but like that's fine. I mean, that's true of like almost every pair of species.
Mhm.
That we don't know what their what like specific species their common ancestor was because we
It's even
don't
true for
have a complete
creationists.
fossil record. Yeah, right, exactly. It's even true for creationists.
Right, like creationists don't have the example of like the body fossil of the common ancestor of like the golden jackal and the coyote, or the coyote and the gray wolf, or the dhole and the red fox. Right? They don't have any of these things.
Right, exactly.
And that they're like,
This is necessarily true for them.
right. And the thing is, if it's a problem for evolution broadly that we don't have literally every species ancestral to all extant species, which is apparently what they would want in order to say that there isn't a missing link problem, then that's a problem for them too, because they believe in common ancestry for various species. So where are the where's the missing link for all the dog species? Where's the common link for all the cat species? Where's the common link for any of this? The answer is nowhere. There isn't one.
Hypocrisy.
Yeah, right. Can you imagine that a bunch of good Christian scientists would actually not be all the way on up and up when it comes to things like intellectual honesty or dealing with the data as it actually comes to them rather than coming up with an answer first?
That is shocking to me.
It is shocking. Now, to be fair, that is
so shocked.
far from all Christians who are scientists. Most
You can see the
Christians
shock
who
on
are
my face.
scientists are actually good scientists who do good work and aren't creationists. So, or who are creationists but just work in fields that are far enough away from anything to do with creationism that it doesn't matter. Right? Like, someone trying to come up with, like, a better hypothesis or a better technique for, like, shaping lenses for eyeglasses is probably not going to bump too much into, like, creation, evolution, or age of the earth nonsense. They probably aren't going to worry about it. You can probably do science in that area just fine. Or, like, if you're working on, like, how to resolve a mathematical model for turbulent flow, which is something that I think was Henry Morris was actually was a scientist who dealt with fluid flow. Like, yeah, okay, fine. You can probably do that while being a young Earth creationist. It probably won't matter. But when it comes to biology or nuclear physics or geology or a whole lot of other things, yeah, you're going to have problems.
Only one could have been ancestral to humans. Only one of them could actually be our ancestor then. Well, which one?
Or neither.
You see.
Yeah, or neither. And yeah, it's at most one. And there's no requirement in biology that we have to have that particular organism, because that's the other thing, right? Let's say that they did find fossil of a canid that looks like it could be the ancestor of, say, the red fox, and the Indian dhole, which is going pretty far back into the canid family tree, right? How would you know that's the one? It might meet your predictions for what the morphology of such a creature should look like. It might have the right number of ribs and might have the right arrangement of teeth and claws and whatnot, right? It might look exactly like what you're looking for. But how do you know that's not a closely related species that actually isn't ancestral to both the dhole and the red fox? You don't. You can't. It's physically impossible. But creationists agree it must have existed.
Mm-hmm.
And if they found a fossil like that, they could use it as evidence for their hypothesis of common ancestry among all canids, and I would not reject that, because I also accept the common ancestry of all canids, and would also expect such species to exist. But neither of us could actually say that that's the ancestor, because we don't have the ability to go back in time and check that kind of thing. But what we can say is we should expect animals like that to have existed, because we are very confident in the common ancestry of two groups. Similarly, with hominins, if we're confident in the existence of a common ancestor between, say, humans and chimpanzees, then we can make predictions about what kinds of animals should have existed in the past, and when we find them, that's confirmation. But we can't go from there to saying then, therefore, this species is definitely ancestral to Homo sapiens. Now, in some very, very recent cases where we can actually get genetics, or at least proteomic data, like protein sequence data, we can be more confident. But that's going to be very, very recent. Much more recent than any Australopithecus.
They lived, he's saying they must have lived at the same time. We just haven't found the fossils, you see, of them living at the same time. We found the Africanus a million years higher in the rock layers, according to their way of dating rocks next.
And do you have any objection to this, Dr. Charles Jackson? I mean, does Charles Jackson think that it's reasonable that every species that existed at a given time we have fossils of? Because it's not.
Like, creationists, I feel I've seen on multiple occasions have like implied that the fossil record is perfect, which would be problematic for them also, but they you can never get them to like actually stop and defend it, but they will imply that the fossil record is perfect. Because they'll say like, oh, there's no reason for you to keep searching for transitional fossils because they don't exist. You know, like the implication being there that we have everything.
And yet we keep finding them anyway.
Isn't that crazy how that works?
Weird. The thing is, you could do a proxy check to see if we found all the transitional fossils by just saying, has the rate of discovery of new transitional fossils stagnated? If it has not stagnated, then we have not even come close to finding all of them. It hasn't stagnated. If anything, it's been accelerating in the past few decades.
Yeah, rate of new species, discovery has been accelerating.
Even in paleontology. I mean, we're at the point now, just with dinosaurs, where a new dinosaur is described almost every week. Like, a new Mesozoic, non-avian dinosaur, almost every week. It's crazy.
That's pretty wacky.
Yeah. Like, if anything, we are in a golden age for things like paleontology. Also,
oh yeah, I mean, you can go to Wikipedia, and if you type in like a year number and then in paleontology, you can look at the number of species that they found that year, and it has just increased with time. So look at 2024 in paleontology. It's like pages and pages and pages of species.
Yeah, do it for 1924.
Right.
Not nearly so many. Also, I'm seeing 102 people watching, which is very nice. But I'm only seeing 39 likes, which means that, unfortunately, I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve. So hit that like button so you don't get Bilbo'd again. But also, let's take a quick intermission, and we will be right back. We are back. Thank you very much, everybody. And look, we just got 6 gifted memberships, 5 from Lieutenant Matt the Navigator and 1 from Kerry Bronson, and we have a poll up. So first, let's go over the poll. The poll is, can we get a 26th emoji? But I just double-checked. And I was just trying to count as I was going on with the stream, and I'm really bad at that, but I double-checked in a way that makes it easier by using multiplication and such. We actually only currently have 24 emojis. It means we only need to get to 25, which is 100 members easier. Currently, the goal is to get 160, and we had just 6 just now. So 163, we can do it. But remember, every time a membership expires, that brings it up by 1. So it's an uphill battle, but we can totally get there. And so let's take 6 drinks. Well, Good Jackson here, who is not as beholden to the drinking rules, can tell us what the best national park is in the continental former United States and why.
The best national park?
Yes.
I don't know. Can I phone a friend?
No, you failed, but that's okay. Because you prevented.
I don't know.
You prevented the dead air, which is all that matters. But also, Vishanti says, "Remember the Darwin emoji I made?" I am now remembering. So that's our goal, guys. We're gonna get Vishanti's Darwin emoji on the channel by getting memberships up. Let's get some memberships in here. I'll tell you what, Jackson.
Yes.
What do you got going on tonight?
Tonight?
Mhm.
Well, Camilla and I are packing to go to South Louisiana tomorrow. Because for the next few days, we're going to be in South Louisiana at a research station with our students.
Okay. You probably can't stay an extra hour then, huh?
Probably not. I'm not. I'm a procrastinator when it comes to packing.
All right. How about
So
this?
I have not finished packing.
If we get to the point where we only need 100 more subscribers, we're currently where we need 163. By the end of what would normally be the scheduled thing, instead of going over to my Discord to watch Power Rangers, I will stick around for an extra hour to talk about language stuff, food and alcohol stuff, TTRPG, all the stuff that you guys like when I go on rants. And I'll try to call some of my co-hosts to see if they get here. Maybe even Vishanti. Vishanti, let me know if you're up for coming in for an hour at the end, if we can get another 63 memberships. That'll be the challenge. Well, I'll keep track. I'll make sure. All right, here we go. It's a tough challenge, I'm going to be honest. It's not an easy thing to do. But if we can do it, I will promise to stick around for an extra hour of whatever it is you guys want. Yeah, we can rant about Power Rangers, Robert Carpenter. We can absolutely rant about Power Rangers. Like, how about the fact that there's basically nothing in production right now? We can rant about that as much as you want.
And here's where Afarensis and Africanus fit in. They are sister species, according to this researcher Berger. Neither of them are our ancestor, as far as I'm concerned. Certainly, Lucy's having terrific problems. We were talking about that.
What does that mean, terrific problems? Oh my god.
There are some terrific problems.
I guess.
And if
sounds like something Trump would say.
And one's not, then there's very
The
good
problem
chance the
was
other one is.
terrific.
Yeah. No one
They've
has
never seen a problem this big.
the biggest problem. We have the biggest problems. No one has
It
problems
was
like us.
Egregious,
Yeah.
some might say. Not me, of course. I wouldn't say that. But the others, they've said this.
I've been told it's a huge problem. All right, let's see. How is our poll doing right now? All right, we got 51 votes. That's more than half the people who voted. So can we get a 20... I'm going to say fifth emoji. Yes has won in a narrow victory with 49% of the vote over Turtle with 47% and No with 3%. And then Sapphire Light, formerly known as Fade to Gray, has gifted 5 more memberships. Thank you so much. Let's take 5 drinks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Here we go.
Either next. In March of 19th of this year, that Newsweek article that we showed you the cover of that just a little while ago, says that the Homo erectus was not our ancestor. DNA makes it clear that same DNA method that they love so much, and they're married to it, they've got to go along with it because they...
No, this probably means our Homo erectus sensu stricto, right? Because chances are, if you go sensu lato, like the broad category
Right,
of
like
things that
Ergaster and Georgicus and all
right.
that, yeah.
Something in there is probably ancestral to Homo sapiens. But if by that you
Yep.
mean the very strictest group, then yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Also,
I just got confirmation. Oh, sorry.
I think, being maybe a little bit nitpicky, but he said that we are wedded to like genetic, I think genetic, like phylogenies, but we don't actually have genetic data for Homo erectus. We have proteomic data, which
Right.
I don't think came out until long after this was filmed. I don't know what he's referencing. I think maybe he's just mistaken in what he's saying.
Dr. Charles Jackson being mistaken?
I know, shock and awe.
My goodness.
But
Who
I
could have
don't-
possibly thought?
But yeah, we don't have genetic data for erectus, just proteomic data from like enamel, I think it is.
By the way, I just got confirmation from Vishanti. She says, I mean, yeah, I'd be down to drop in for an hour. So there you go. If we can get this to only need 100 more memberships, which means we get 58 more, I will have a third hour, Vishanti. We will talk about whatever sort of nerdy crap you want to. And Jackson, you could even listen.
Okay. I mean, I do like talking about nerdy stuff. Because the videos that I'm about to start dropping on my channel, that Dapper here is also in one of the editors for some of the new videos, and so there's some stuff that I think you would have some interesting opinions on.
Ooh. Will I have controversial opinions?
I don't know. I feel like I don't know enough about some of these fields to know if your opinion is controversial.
Okay, that's fair. Lieutenant... oh, sorry, go ahead.
So no, I was done. Yeah.
Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $4.99 says, all budding paleo experts aspire to one day grace the pages of the prestigious journal Newsweek. Oh, yeah. Also, I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to see, does 58 actually get us to Bent Gets the New Pizza? I'm pretty sure. Oh, not quite. Oh, here we go.
They already told us they think it's smart, so they can't back out now. It's made them say that humans and monkeys bred together. It's made them say that maybe hybridization is the way evolution worked. And now it's made...
No, it hasn't. The thing is, Charles Jackson confuses anytime any biologist suggests something that isn't just mutation and natural selection for being some kind of brand new paradigm shifting overturning of Darwin and the evolution was wrong the whole time, and they just never admitted it. All of that is wrong. It has always been wrong. It is wrong now. He still says it now. It is no less wrong now. That isn't how it works. I'm sorry to burst his bubble, but no.
Making them say that Homo erectus was almost certainly a dead end and not, as some scientists had argued, our ancestor. Homo erectus.
I would love to know exactly what this article means by that, but because this is a popular article, right, it's going to be doing this in terms of not actually telling us if this is sensu lato, exactly what they mean by Homo erectus. So I'm going to have to guess. Whereas if he had bothered to actually cite the real peer-reviewed research underlying this news article, I could go check. I could figure out what this is, but I'm not going to try to figure out what back issue of National Geographic or Newsweek or whatever this is, try to figure out what source this is.
Yeah, I don't know what DNA they're referring to here.
Yeah. This is not just cite your sources. Cite sources that matter, right? If you're gonna, I don't. What's a good example, right? If you're trying to prove to me that your theological position about Christianity is correct, citing Pastor Bob doesn't help. That's not going to help. I want you to cite like actual historical ancient documents and things like that. Make your case. That's that. I'm trying to translate it for any creationists who might be in the audience, right? You know what? This is the scientific version of be Berean. Remember, the Bereans searched the scriptures to see what was true, and Paul praised them for this. I'm speaking to the creationists in the audience here. The science version of be Berean is search the peer-reviewed literature to see what is true. And be wary of things that are published in the peer-reviewed literature, but that have been retracted, or have not actually been accepted, and instead have had further studies that disconfirm the results of the thing that you would like. That's the science version of being a Berean. Which, my goodness, that's the most like an evangelical I've sounded in decades. And it feels weird. Because normal people don't say be Berean. That's not a normal thing. Lion Finished Journey for 222 says, Hail Nero, Daps, and Good Jacks, and hail science. Thank you very much. Then Dutch Man That Never Saw the Snow Tunicate for $2 says, Nobody is wrong like me. I'm the most wrong. CJ, thank you. Ken Sarcopterygian Helicopterian Halstead, which is not an easy thing to say, for $4.99 says, I might feel embarrassed for whatever institution claims this man's PhD, right? Can you imagine being the school that gave this guy a PhD? I wouldn't want to be that.
Yeah, I'm sure that when they put like their alums on their the pictures of the alums on their hallways, his is not one of them on the hallway.
Yeah, no, I doubt it. All right. We only need 53 more memberships because wait, I can't do it. It's whatever. But Anonymous Pie has just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur members. Thank you so much. Let's take 5 drinks. Go. Why is my drink counter being weird? Stop it. Why did it just set to 0? Oh my goodness. Sorry. Sorry, everybody. My drink counter is being weird, and I'm going to call it a Dapper as a professional, so we're going to take 6 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. BitCourse, please DM to me the source article, because I would like to be able to look into it. If by the source article you mean like the Newsweek article, still send that to me. But I'm not going to have the time during this show to go check the originals, the actual peer-reviewed thing. That would be something I would like to look into.
This is now out of the family tree. Next. And here's that family tree. We were talking about Homo erectus fades from the family tree because of DNA evidence. And I showed you this yesterday. I'll run through it real quick with you. But all these other things in the family tree are falling out of the family tree too. Notice the little white squares are where they...
Okay. I want to point out that literally nothing in here has been taken, quote-unquote, out of the family tree. The reason you can tell is because it connects to all of them.
Yeah.
That's what it means to have a family tree. A family tree isn't just your descendants. If you've ever looked at like a genealogy program or website or just on paper, you'll notice that it also has cousins and siblings and things like that. Those are part of your family tree. Someone doesn't stop being part of your family tree because they're not directly ancestral to you. That's not how family trees work. Charles Jackson doesn't know what a family tree is. I'm going to take a drink for that, because that's very dumb. And my Unfinished Journey just gifted a Dapper Dinosaur membership. Thank you so much. I'm trying to fix my thing that's keeping track here. Take a drink for that. Alright, we need 52 more for an extra hour, and getting us only 100 away from a new emoji. A Charles, or Chucky D. I'm going to call it Chucky D, probably. I like to call Charles Darwin. Good old Chucky D. As if, like, we were friends or something.
They actually have fossil evidence. The dotted lines are their imaginations of how evolution might have proceeded from one of these to the other.
It's called a hypothesis. There, Bad Jackson. It's not just someone made it up one day. And the thing is, this isn't a thing that doesn't happen in young Earth creationism, right? If you go to the Ark Encounter, you will find that they have exhibits about quote-unquote kinds, and they will show you a family tree for Felidae, for what they call Pungidae, which is what they call the great apes minus humans. They will have another one for Canidae. I think they have one for Ursidae, but I'm not actually sure about that because I've never been there and I'm just kind of going off my vague impressions, so don't quote me on that one. But also, Aiden's Miscellany has just given another Dapper Dinosaur membership. Thank you so much. Take a drink. So, they also have these family trees, and those are just as much a hypothesis as any other family tree, right? Those creationists don't have a complete record of all of the canids that ever existed down to like the individual level. That's not a realistic possibility. They can't. And yet they'll say, "Oh yeah, well, you mean there's no problem with this? This is perfectly that's a thing." Then this is a thing too. This is a smaller group, a more closely related group than the canids that they think are a kind. I want to be very clear here. You as a human watching this are more closely related to basically everything on here. You're more similar to basically everything on here than a wolf is to a red fox. By a pretty good margin, too. So if their all canid family tree is reasonable, this is even more reasonable here. Alright, My Unfinished Journey has just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, and Lieutenant Math the Navigator for $4.99 says, preaches, quote, family values, doesn't know how the hell families work. Don't be like this man. Yeah, don't be like Charles Jack. Be this thing that I like to call honest. And also, while he hasn't been explicitly bigoted today, the Venn diagram of bigots and young earth creationists is pretty much just a small circle inside the bigger circle of bigots. Not exactly. I have known some young earth creationists who spoke out against things like transphobia, racism, and homophobia and things like that. What Bread of Life comes to mind? Rebecca? So, like, not quite, but there's only the tiniest little sliver of young earth creationists outside the bigot circle. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that he's a... And, thank you, Lieutenant Math the Navigator, who just gifted 5 more memberships. So now I have to take 10 drinks. So, Bad Jackson, why don't you tell us which hero ship from Star Trek is the best one and why, while I take 10 drinks?
You are constantly asking me things that I don't know anything about.
It doesn't matter, you just make it up.
I don't know. You said which hero ship? Can I ship...
Consistently in the time that it takes me to take the drinks, you have waffled on about not knowing the thing more than actually know it, just saying whatever.
Captain Kirk and Spock, that's my ship.
That's not even a ship, but okay.
I ship them together. They should be together.
I mean, you're not
they deserve each other.
You're not the only one who does that shit. But
yes.
I will say that Spock and T'Pring from Strange New Worlds, that's a pretty good couple, even though we know it doesn't work out.
I think that you derive some sort of enjoyment from asking me questions about which I don't know the answer.
Part of it is I don't know exactly which kinds of weird nerdy stuff that you're into because you don't talk about it enough.
I'm sorry.
Like, do you like Star Wars, Deep Space Nine, Star Trek, Babylon 5, Stargate, Game of Thrones?
All about the Star Wars. I know about that.
All right, well, I'll ask about Star Wars next time then.
You're gonna ask about like the one thing I don't know anything about.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you about like the Legends career of Grand Admiral Thrawn.
No.
Alex Marcus says Spock / Kirk is the OG ship. I mean, you're not wrong about that. That is one of the oldest ships. And my goodness, did Leonard Nimoy have women throwing themselves at him.
I really like that clip. I've seen it. It gets posted on social media every so often, where Captain Kirk thinks that Spock is like giving him a back massage, and it's like not. I really like that. I laugh every time I see it.
All right, we're only at 41 needed memberships. All right, here we go.
Notice that Homo habilis in the middle there has a little line leading to a dead end of it, and it's never connected to any of the dotted lines leading to us in the upper right-hand corner, Homo sapiens. Notice that Lucy...
I mean, habilis Habilis and rudolfensis, whether those are two separate species or the same, is debated. It's debated whether like that's the ancestral, like Homo species for us, or is it a side branch? It might be either. We don't really know. Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
In the middle, lower middle, the Australopithecus afarensis, again, has all these dotted lines running all over. We do have the fossils. I think she was a chimp.
I mean,
well, you're just wrong and dumb.
No matter what Australopithecus afarensis was, right? No matter how ancestral it is to humanity or not, like modern humans, it definitely wasn't a chimp, right? Like
objectively not a chimp.
It's got the wrong size and shape, size of teeth. It's got the wrong shaped tooth row. It's got the wrong shaped spinal column. It's got the wrong shaped hip.
Yep.
Got the wrong arm and leg proportions. It's got
pelvis, the wrists, ankles, everything.
It's not as prognathic as a modern chimpanzee. Like everything about Australopithecus afarensis says, not a chimpanzee. The feet are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean,
Dapper. Think of all those chimps that have an inline big toe.
Yeah, I mean, just so many of them. I'm taking a drink. For Lucy's just a chimpanzee. Like, even if she's just an ape with no relationship to humans, she's definitely not a freaking chimp. Jeez. You wouldn't even make that mistake with animals that are much more morphologically similar to chimpanzees, right? Like, would he call a gorilla just a chimp? Probably not.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's what's a good it's sort of like saying like, oh, hey, do you think that the crab-eating fox of South America, which you should all look up, is just a wolf? No, I don't. They're not even in the same genus. They're related, sure. They're more similar than, say, other group members of Canidae might be, but like, I hate it. I hate it.
He wouldn't even
so
say
much.
that like a domesticated dog is a gray wolf.
Yeah.
So like, why on earth is he making this mistake? Like, there's no reason for it.
Which, by the way, Dan Biddle keeps saying that Canis lupus is a kind, and I can't figure out if he is breaking with young Earth creationists and saying that species is the kind level, or if he just doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. Because both of those seem similarly reasonable.
Yeah.
Fossils lead to the Africanus, but none of those dotted lines connect to a line that leads to us. That just shows she's not our ancestor.
I mean, maybe it would if, one, this was actually not a hypothesis, but some kind of somehow confirmed fact, and two, we were looking at an actual phylogeny from a real paper and not just some infographic created for a Pop Sci article. Because remember, none of this is actually evidence that's being put forth here. This is a reporter summarizing the conclusion based on evidence, based on their interpretation of a paper, and then explaining that to an in-house artist. That's a whole lot of levels of we're not getting the actual picture here. And then we have another guy who has a bad faith reason for talking about this, intentionally trying to downplay the significance of what we know that's the basis for this infographic. I don't know how many levels of, degrees away from the actual source we need to go before we can say this is kind of worthless, but I think we're there when it comes to the synthesis of an actual paper by a reporter without training, giving that to an artist, then being interpreted by another guy in bad faith. So, yeah. Lieutenant Math the Navigator for 499 says, we know that the Australopith foot is different from genus Homo because Tarantino never made a creepy scene centering on it. So we actually do know that the Australopithecus foot is different from the human foot. Both from the actual body fossils as well as from trackways, like specifically the Laetoli trackway, which has in dozens of actual real peer-reviewed papers, which I in fact have read, been shown to be biomechanically and anatomically distinct from modern Homo sapiens feet, but also distinct from chimpanzee feet, and while closer to Homo sapiens feet, distinct enough that it is clearly not a member of Homo sapiens that's doing the walking, which is something creationists will lie about. And what they'll do is they'll cherry pick statements from scientists that are being hyperbolic about how cool and human looking they are. And they'll say things like, well, if you came across this on a beach, you'd just think it was a human track. And you know what? You might, right? Because most of us aren't, track weight experts. But when actual scientists actually look and reconstruct the biomechanics and the anatomy of the people who left, or the organisms, I say, who left the Laetoli tracks, they're like, nope, not a Homo sapiens. Absolutely not. So, here we go.
They can't even imagine. DNA knocks out the Homo erectus. Let's see how some of these other ones are knocked out of the running for being the missing link.
I still don't know what DNA he could possibly mean. I would love to, but we just don't have anything. Except, for some reason, YouTube Studio continually crashing, which I don't know why that happens. Also, Dragon Spartan Official and Heather Bodacious Claims Coon have both had bingo, as well as Fearmonger. My goodness, you guys. Congratulations to you guys. Do you want to see any more? Fearmonger seems to have had a bingo at some point, so congratulations, everybody. All right, here we go.
Link ancestor to us. Anatomy, either being more chimp-like or ape-like, knocks out Sahelanthropus chadensis, Australopithecus afarensis, many of the...
How does one of the oldest hominins, having very basal features, knock it out of being a hominin?
It's too transitional.
Yeah, that seems like... I'm going to take a drink. So many times I've heard creationists basically come out and say, well, this is too transitional. It can't be transitional.
That's one of the routine little things that RJ notes is like too transitional to be a transition. The no cousins rules, slicing, that kind of stuff. We mentioned all those in rocks. I think if I remember correctly, I believe Erica was dueling with the car salesman and his breatharian friend over was it Homo habilis being too transitional or something like that?
Yeah, that does sound right.
Yeah, they're like, it's too good. Or Tiktaalik is another one. They're like, it's too good of a transition, so it can't be a transition. Consider maybe it's just transitional.
Maybe it's just the thing that you say doesn't exist. And also, Jillian San Andreas Fountain Wren says that I think I had a bingo at 6:34. Jeez, that was fast. We barely even started at that point.
The Paranthropus species, many of these other things that are at the ends of dead-end dotted lines are just too chimpy or too apey, and evolution.
They're just too transitional, gosh darn it.
Well, Paranthropus, again, he keeps saying chimpy. They're nothing like chimps.
No.
Nothing at all like chimps.
I mean,
but
compared to other apes. Obviously, they're a lot like chimps if you compare them to turtles, but whatever.
Sure. All apes are to a degree chimpy, right? But they're Paranthropines are either descended from or share a closer common ancestor with Australopithecus africanus. So there's that line of more robust Australopiths. Fun fact: we actually do have a direct speciation event, if I remember correctly. There's a paper I think a couple of years ago that talked about how we have one species to another of Paranthropus, which is kind of cool. But yeah, they're not a direct line to us because they have, I think they re-evolved a sagittal crest, and they apparently were big herbivores. So yeah.
Yeah.
Evolutionists themselves have said they're not our ancestor. Next.
Yeah.
Also, what if it comes in the wrong place in the fossils?
It doesn't, is the thing. It doesn't. That's not how fossils work. Nothing is in the wrong place because wherever we find it is the right place because we found it there. There's no such thing as in the wrong place. Now, there might be in the wrong place for your particular pet hypothesis, but nothing has ever been found that would in any way even come close to questioning human common ancestry, chimpanzees, that has been found at all, and never mind found and had that problem because it was in the quote-unquote the wrong place. I'm going to let this go a little bit more. Next time we pause, I'm going to have Jackson go on. I'm going to get myself another Dark and Stormy because I am out because of all the gifted memberships, which don't stop because we still have 41 to go. And we only have about 45 or 40-ish minutes to get there. So like 1 a minute would not quite get us there.
The Homo habilis seems to be existing at the same time as Homo erectus and now therefore can't be the one that evolved into Homo erectus.
Jackson, why don't you talk about the fact that a species can have a descendant species and then also still persist as a morphologically identifiable group of the previous species that gave rise to the new. Why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess the easiest way to explain that is for most of us, our grandparents and our parents overlapped for quite a bit of time with us, possibly even our great grandparents. And that's basically how progenitor species can still exist or even outlast their descendant species. Is the population that they budded off from just continues to persist. You know, so you can have like the marbled crawfish Procambarus virginalis is descended from the crawfish species Procambarus phallax, and yet both species are still around today. Phallax didn't go extinct just because virginalis came out of it. You know, so I mean there are examples like that all over the place. In can't really think of any others like offhand, but I mean every time you have a novel like a speciation event, that's basically what happens. Is it's almost always a cladogenetic event rather than an anagenetic event. So when you have cladogenesis, you have a branch, a novel branch that comes off instead of anagenesis, which is where the entire population evolves together into the new species. And while anagenesis does happen, it's just not as common as cladogenesis, just because it's really easy for like splinter populations to arise.
Well done, Jackson. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
It was good that I didn't ask you to talk about Star Trek.
I would have waffled again.
Yeah, I can tell. Jackson, you just gotta start watching Star Trek.
So a friend of Camilla and mine is making us watch Game of Thrones right now,
Okay.
and so we just at the end of season 5.
Okay.
And I guess I can talk about where we are in Game of Thrones as of right now.
Well, maybe if we need you to talk about nerdy stuff again. Guys, if you want to hear Jackson's try to talk about nerdy stuff, just make me have to drink a whole bunch, and then I'll send it to him to talk about that stuff while I take drinks.
Africanus can't be the one that Lucy evolved into because it's more primitive and it's 1 million years later. Just the whole story gets messed up.
Oh no, biology is complicated, therefore science is fake, is basically the argument here. If biology isn't simple and straightforward and doesn't look like a road or a ladder or some other very linear analogy, then that means science is fake. Gift Jackson a Paramount Plus subscription? I mean, that would work. But then, does that give Paramount permission to kill Jackson's wife and get away with it? Like Disney claimed, subscribing to Disney Plus even with just the free...
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you signed up for a free trial for Disney Plus. That means we get to kill your wife.
That's right. I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, that was a wild thing. They did retract that that claim. Kit Johnson for $1.99 with their first super chat sends in a bunch of Japanese, which I will rely on machines for, but it's going to be Genesis bag of dicks, right? So we'll take a drink. I think it's like Aiji wa Nikubo no Kaban desu, I think, is how that's supposed to be. But I don't actually know, because I don't know if you know this. I really don't speak very much Japanese at all, despite having received compliments on my Japanese pronunciation from way back when I had a commercial for my merch that was partially, or actually entirely in Japanese. Yeah, that was weird. But it's a part of the channel lore. Wings of Shoe for $2 says, talking about nerdy stuff, Battletech. Yeah, we could talk about Battletech, but only if we get a whole bunch more memberships, because currently we still need 41.
Next. Well, how about things that are the same as another one that's eliminated? Homo ergaster can't be our ancestor because they've decided it's the same thing as Homo erectus, and that's been eliminated.
Okay, so once again, Charles Jackson does not know the difference between Homo erectus sensu stricto, which means just the animals that are very close to the actual like type specimen, versus sensu lato, which is a much wider, much more diverse cast of characters, some of whom have been proposed to be parts of other species. So Charles Jackson is fundamentally unequipped to even understand the arguments for and against things like Homo ergaster being ancestral to Homo sapiens. Because he fundamentally doesn't even understand the terms. And I'm barely at the point where I can have a like reasonably informed opinion about like whether or not I think it's reasonable to say that Homo ergaster is or isn't ancestral to Homo sapiens. And I've been working on this kind of stuff for years. This is a highly technical field, and Charles Jackson doesn't even know the difference between Homo erectus, sensu stricto, and sensu. Let's see. Olivia Williams for $6.99 Beaver Buck says, "I'm sorry you're watching Game of Thrones post season 4. Ghidorah. We'll take a drink for Ghidorah."
I really enjoyed season 5. Okay, let me rephrase. The show itself, I think, is a good show. Season 5 was massively depressing.
Buckle up.
I guess for anyone who... Yeah, we just finished it, and at the end of it, I looked at our friend and I said, "I'm done. I quit." And she thought that was funny, and was like, "No, we've got more to go." But it was very depressing, because like every season, I felt like had its ups and downs, but 5 was just all down, everything downhill.
You're not done with that.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Eliminated by the DNA. Aurorantuganensis, Ardipithecus ramidus, and Ardipithecus cadava can't be our ancestor because they're supposed to be the same genus as Sahelanthropus chilensis.
No.
If they were the same genus, then they would have the same generic name. They'd all be Australia or Ardipithecus, or they'd all be Sahelanthropus. I'm taking a drink. I don't even know what does he think the word genus means?
I don't even. What is he even getting at? I don't even know.
It sounds like he's just pulling things straight out of his colon. Which, by the way, is always a funny misspelling for cologne. I've seen plenty of Instagram posts that were like talking about, "My boyfriend's colon smells so nice." I'm like, I think he might have meant cologne, although maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he did mean colon.
So that can't be our ancestor. Well, next, how about ones that are actually humans? We're not sure about the Hobbit fossil. Some people think it's a human. We know Neanderthal.
You're not sure about it because you think that's a meaningful distinction. There, Charles Jackson.
I think I'm in the camp that human just means Homo sapiens.
Okay.
Again, it doesn't matter at all. A human could be all of Homo. It could be all hominins. It really doesn't matter. But that's kind of, when I hear human, I just think like either anatomically modern or anatomically archaic Homo sapiens. That's what I think of.
And that's because fundamentally it's an arbitrary label, and different people put it in different places, and it doesn't mean anything about those organisms. Right? Yeah. You declaring Homo floresiensis human or not doesn't mean anything to Homo floresiensis. Even if they were still alive, it wouldn't mean anything. It's like the argument about whether Pluto is a planet or not. It doesn't matter to Pluto. It's an arbitrary box that humans put things into. And humans have arbitrary definitions as to whether or not things get put in the same box as them. And anything that you put in the same box as you could be argued to be in a different box by some person who really, really, really doesn't like having big boxes. And a whole lot more things than you're comfortable with could be argued to be put in that same human box by someone who really likes big boxes.
Which is why it's really funny when the same creationists pit like Homo erectus as both totally ape and totally human.
Depending on which day you ask them.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, there is no consensus among creationists as to which hominins count as quote-unquote fully human and which ones are just ape. And that on its own should tell you that the transitional sequence is so good that there's no hard line that you can draw. In fact, the more species we find, the harder it is to draw that line, because that's how evolution works. You get lots of relatively minor variations that sometimes can branch into whole new family trees that gain lots of differences. But down in the weeds, It's a mix of very closely related organisms, sometimes interbreeding, sometimes splitting, sometimes coming back together. And there's no lines to draw because biology is fundamentally kind of fuzzy.
Neanderthals were actually people. The new name is Homo sapiens neanderthalensis.
Nope, by the
Nope.
time this talk was given, that name had been conclusively removed from the running. So we'll take a drink, because no, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis is long defunct and was at the time of this talk. There is no more serious advocacy for for Neanderthals as a subspecies of Homo sapiens.
And we are Homo sapiens sapiens. So that's knocked out. Also,
What do you mean it's knocked out? How can humans be knocked out of the human family tree? Does Charles Jackson think that his ancestors aren't humans? Taking a drink for Homo sapiens has been knocked out of the ancestry of humans. It's like saying my dad's been knocked out of my family tree. What does that mean?
He's once removed now.
Yeah, it's my dad once removed. Don't worry about it. I'm taking a second drink. I can't. Okay.
Cro-Magnon isn't even on the chart, and
Yeah, that's just because
Because
Cro-Magnon.
it's just humans.
Yeah. That's just archaic European Homo sapiens. That's all that is.
Yeah, it's not even worth it.
Yeah. Jillian Wren says, but had you considered reasons? I had not, actually.
neither is Homo rudolfensis. I'm not sure why they didn't
Again,
put
it's-
Homo rudolfensis.
Because it's okay. When this was written, I mean, there still is a debate over whether rudolfensis is a separate species or is just Homo habilis with greater prognathism. Like, it again, it's again the problem of we have so many transitional fossils that like it's hard to know whether to separate them into different species or not. That's how fine the gradation is.
Yep. We have a similar problem with other lineages, which is no one cares, right? Like, we have the same problem.
Diatoms?
Yeah,
You think
that's exactly who I was
creationists
going
are
to
out here being like, nah, this isn't this species of diatom. It's a different. No, they don't care. They just genuinely don't care.
And yet we have amazing fossil records for the evolution of diatoms. It's almost down to the individual.
Yep. We have literal species to species like transitions in diatoms, foraminifera, cololithophoras, radiolarians. But you will never, ever, ever, ever hear creationists talk about any of those because they don't care. They're not barnyard animals or dinosaurs or humans, so they don't care.
You're also not going to see them in a zoo.
Yeah.
Because creationists only care about animals you can see at the barn, at the zoo, or humans. That's it. That's all they care about. If, like, a 5-year-old wouldn't know what that animal is, creationists probably don't care. My Unfinished Journey says, well, your adoptive dad isn't a dinosaur. I mean my dinosaur dad, man. Come on. That was the whole point of all of this. Oh, yeah, people.
Kenyanthropus rudolfensis is there. I know that Cro-Magnon is now considered human. Neanderthals are considered
there you go.
human.
Neanderthals are considered by humans by some people. Because it depends where you draw the line, man. Good Jackson, you draw it around just Homo sapiens. I tend not to care because it's always arbitrary, and so I don't know what to answer with that, right? But like, if you asked me, hey, if you met a modern Neanderthal, would you consider that to be like a person? Yeah, probably. What if I met a living, I don't know, Homo habilis? I don't know. I have no idea whether or not I would consider a Homo habilis to be like a person. I know I'm open to grade 8 personhood arguments in general, but I'm not convinced by them. So, like, I don't know what I would do. But I'm pretty sure if I met an actual Neanderthal, I'd be like, yeah, that's a person as much as any human. Does that make them a human? I don't know, because again, it's arbitrary. Right now, in the modern day, human is very easy. It's Homo sapiens. There's nothing that's so close related to Homo sapiens, you may or may not want to apply the label human to it. Okay, cool. But the fact that in the past that's questionable means I just don't bother drawing that line. I just don't care. If you want to tell me the Homo ergaster is human, I'll say, okay, cool, that's fine by me. If you want to say, no, only Homo sapiens, I'll say, okay, fine, that's okay too. It's fundamentally arbitrary, and making arguments about this, like creationists do, is very stupid, but they do it all the time. They even do it with the whole kinds thing being families, right? Like, oh, family's at about, or kind is at about the family level. There's no such thing as the family level. Every family is just an arbitrary collection of genera that taxonomists have said pass the vibe check for being a family. That's what it takes to be a family. A bunch of taxonomists said, yeah, these genera pass the vibe check. We'll let them be a family. That's it.
Literally, the goats not being in the same family as cow, or sorry, in the same kind, despite them being in the same family. Yeah.
Yeah, that just shows
And
that
why?
they're being just as arbitrary.
Because they look different. People
Yeah.
think of them as different.
People don't think cows and goats are the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Do people really think that, like, I don't know, what's another good family? That, like, weasels and otters are the same thing? I don't know. I don't think they're the same thing. In the same family, though.
I think that Homo rudolfensis is probably considered human also.
Okay, on what basis? Because this is another thing, right? At least when it comes to actual paleoanthropologists, they can come up with objective criteria for placing animals in a one species or another. Right? If you ask a paleoanthropologist, hey, what are the anatomical diagnostic characteristics for Homo rudolfensis, or Homo habilis, or Homo ergaster, or Homo erectus sensu stricto, or Homo neanderthalensis, they can give you an answer. If you ask a creationist, hey, what are the anatomical characteristics that make something a human, you do not get a useful answer. You might get an answer, but it turns out that it will include lots of things that they don't want to include, or it will exclude lots of things they want to include, or both. And one of the best pieces of evidence for this is the now years-long failure of Donnie Badinsky, the used car salesman, and his breatharian idiot friend to even come close to coming up with a definition for human that would allow them to unambiguously place at least sufficiently, like, well-preserved skeletons in either the human or non-human categories without them objecting to those assignments. They have been working on this for, 5-6 years now? In consultation, in some cases, with actual creationists who do paleontology stuff. Haven't even come close. And it's, again, because it's a fundamentally arbitrary distinction that they imagine has some kind of objective reality behind it, when it doesn't.
Yeah, because again, one thing you have to, like, remember is that Australopithecus is a grade, not a clade. Right? So some Australopithecus, like Australopithecus sediba, are more closely related to all Homo than they are to any other Australopiths. So you have to make a definition that, like, includes all Homo, but or whatever they consider human. I don't know if it's even Homo. Maybe they don't consider like habilis, but you have to make up some kind of definition that includes all of those. That is not just like, okay, well, the molars are like a millimeter longer. The jaw is slightly more, like, parabolic than that of other Australopiths. Like, because it's all just like percent changes. It's nothing.
Right.
There are no like, okay, right here is where it's completely different. No, everything is just like slight gradual modifications.
Yep.
It's always change of degrees, not change of type.
All right, here we go.
I'm not sure about that one, though, but it isn't even on the chart anymore. Next. Look what the New York Times, that same article I referenced a little earlier, says. The human...
Yes. Once again, a well-known, well-respected peer-reviewed journal. The New York Times.
Family tree has become a bush with many branches.
True.
Yeah, like how evolution works. Jeez, I'm taking a drink. This guy is really getting to me tonight. Jackson.
Evolution found to be branch-like.
Seriously. This would be like saying, like, hey, we found CCTV footage of the resurrection, therefore Christianity false. Like, that's how evolution works. Evolution works in a branching pattern. The fact that that's how it looks like hominins are, or were, that's evidence for evolution. That's the fossil record confirming the theory of evolution. by meeting the predictions you would make on the basis thereof.
So I really dislike how often creationists point to like newspapers, because funny enough, it's actually way harder to look up old newspapers than it is to find like older technical papers oftentimes. As long as they're like in English. If it's like an old Russian paper, like good luck with that. But like most of the time, it's with the sources that we have today, you can pretty usually find most technical literature, or if you are like part of university, you can use like the interlibrary loan to find it. With newspapers, it's a lot harder because you have to hope that like someone has the archive for it, and then like that archive doesn't actually cost money to get in, because a lot of newspaper archives do cost money to use their services. I've been having that problem with the chapter I'm writing of The Rocks Were There, because Ken Ham keeps citing newspapers from like 1995 in this 2007 article he wrote. Yeah, and it's like I have to kind of guess at what he's getting at, because the way he writes is like incredibly vague. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I can try to find this, and then sometimes I can find it, sometimes I can't. And so if I can't, I have to like use other methods to try to figure out what he's talking about, because he mentions Unenlogia, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, is a dromaeosaur from South America. And this, he references it by citing a newspaper and saying, like, 20 fragments of a reptile claimed to be a bird were found in South America. So I was like, I don't know what the frick he's talking about. So I had to go look up like we talked about earlier, like 1995 in paleontology on Wikipedia, and then look through every dinosaur that was named that year, and look at like,
my goodness,
all the ones that came out of South America. And I finally, like, going through all those, I figured out he was extremely vaguely referencing Unenlogia, because it was originally thought to be like sister to Aviale. So was Mononicus, by the way. And so I was like, oh my god, it would have been so much easier if you just named it, for goodness sakes.
Right?
Like, just cite a technical paper. Stop citing newspapers, please. I beg you.
Challenge level impossible, because they can't read the technical papers. Like,
yeah.
Seriously. Randy Galuza is like the poster child for being unable to read papers, but then bothering to cite them anyway, right? Randy Galuza read a paper about the taxonomic distribution of mimic rove beetles.
Okay.
In which it is very clear that the mimic or ant-mimicking rove beetles have a species by species ant-mimicking morphology.
Right.
And he took that to mean that adult rove beetles can change their shape to mimic the local ant population upon finding themselves near a local ant population.
No. No. No.
He fundamentally couldn't read that at all.
That's so dumb. Well, this is the same guy. I'm sorry, this is the same, like... Okay, I have to say, maybe controversial opinion. The guys who defend continuous environmental tracking are, like, the worst creationists.
How is that controversial?
They're a level... Do it.
How is that controversial?
Okay, I'm just saying maybe. But, like, it seems to me they're a level below, like, all other young Earth creationists, except for flat earthers. Because, like...
And also Ramat. Because Ramat can't figure out if he thinks that continuous environmental tracking or natural selection is true. And so he'll argue for both on different days.
That's fair. But, like, it just seems like, in general, the professional creationists who argue for CET are worse at doing creationism than most creationists are. Because, like, whether it's Galuza or Big Wave Dave, like, because he cited that freaking Mexican cave tetra paper and said, oh, this paper says that if you grow them in the presence of light, they'll grow eyes. When the paper, word for word, says the exact opposite of that.
Literally the opposite. It could not be more clear. If you grow them in
the presence of light, they do not grow eyes.
Yeah, light has absolutely no effect on whether or not they grow eyes. What does have an effect, though, is their ancestry, which is exactly the prediction from natural selection and exactly opposite the prediction from continuous environmental tracking.
Yeah.
That paper
God,
on
they're
its
just so
own
dumb.
refutes continuous environmental tracking, but they love to cite it. And they even have their own little pet population of Mexican tetras that they're raising in different conditions. And the most that they've shown from that is that, did you know that Mexican cave tetras can get a tan? Well, Randy knows.
On their little pigmentless bodies, that's not surprising.
Right, right. Oh no, slightly more UV radiation caused this cavefish to become slightly darker. Yeah, that would happen to you too if you spent your whole life in a cave. Sorry.
They're so stupid. Oh my
It's
god, they're so
amazing.
stupid.
It's amazing. All right, we're gonna hit play. This is not supposed to be about Randy Galuzzo.
Instead of a ladder, a straight line of descendants, like your great-great-grandfather, your great-grandfather, your grandfather.
Are you just ignoring that all of those people usually have other descendants that aren't you? He really doesn't know how families work. Bad Jackson, you have a family. You must have cousins.
No, he's part of like an asexually reproducing lineage. That's only one.
I'm taking a drink. Like this, come on. You've at least heard of cousins, right? Like
maybe he's anagenetic. Like each parent only gives birth like individually, asexually to an offspring, then they immediately like die. And then the offspring grows up.
But even then, he's surviving in a human society. He would have known about the concept of cousins.
You would think.
Pegachase for $5 says CET is one transposition away from CTE. Coincidence? No? Yes? I think yes. I'm going to go with yes.
What does that mean?
I don't understand the question. CET is one transposition away from CE. And it's one substitution away from CRT.
Oh.
Yeah. So
correct. Cancelled.
Randy is woke, and I think that the ICR is about to go broke because CET way too much like CRT. They're done.
Better now than never, I guess. So,
I mean, at this point, they might as well just say that trans people exist and shouldn't be mistreated, which is, of course, the height of I don't know the bad things that they don't like, which is a really weird thing for me.
Yeah, it's it is quite a weird thing. I was actually reading the other day about the National Association of or the National College Athletic Association or whatever of like all the college sports. They have over 500,000 members, right? In the in this like college athletic association.
I mean, I believe you, but no, I didn't know that.
Okay, so there's over like 500,000 people in it, and Dapper, do you want to guess how many of those people are trans?
10.
It's 40, which is like less than it's 0.001 or something. Like it's such a ridiculously.
This is a pressing issue of our times that requires us to write laws to punish those 40 people for their existing.
Sorry, 0.00008%.
Yeah.
Or sorry, that because 0.008%. Sorry. This is 0.008% of the athletes are trans. Right. And that requires us to have legislation about it.
Mm-hmm. I was in the right order of magnitude. So I'm going to call that a win.
It's just bananas.
Also, CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. The gridiron football brain disease from getting your head knocked around too much.
Your father and you, it's this bushy, problematic picture that you just saw.
A bushy, problematic problem sounds like a family, man. I don't know what to tell you. That sounds like descent from a common ancestor.
From just this year in 2007, and here in June of 2007, the New York Times is just saying, well, it's really getting more complicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because biology is fucking complicated. I did it. I dropped the one.
That is crazy how that happens, huh?
If it
Biology
weren't
do be
complicated,
complicated.
that would be suspicious.
Aren't creationists always saying that, like, because things in the cell are complicated, that's evidence of God? Aren't they always saying that?
Maybe this is just an extension of that. God made so many complicated patterns of hominins just to test your faith, guys. Man, that God, he's always testing your faith. He's a trickster. He's tricky. He'll get you if you're not being careful. He'll leave all sorts of physical evidence of things that just aren't true because I guess he's a dick like that, apparently. Like, okay, look, I don't think that
Are we like
every
bringing back
God
Gnosticism? Or
I don't think every God concept ends up with a God who's a dick, right? But of the ones that do, the young Earth creationist God is way up there on like the dickometer of just being like the worst. He's always doing stuff like flooding the world, ordering the death of babies. He's doing stuff like tricking you into not believing in him by making all of physical reality look like it's not what his word says it is, and then sending you to hell for believing your own lying eyes instead of some book. Like, man, the God that young Earth creationists believe in is just the absolute worst, and he's not that's not the God of Christianity broadly, right? Yeah. Not all Christians believe all of these things about God. But the young Earth creationist of the Christian God is goddamn atrocious. I'm glad that that's not the God that every Christian believes in. Imagine that being your role model.
Yeah.
And, when you are believing a lie, or even trying to convince people of a lie, it really does get complicated.
I mean, my irony meter just broke.
Next. Again, I want to remind you what Donald Johanson, the Lucy discoverer, says: nobody really places a great deal of faith in any human phylogenetic tree.
Nor should you. Why would you want to have faith in that? They're hypotheses. What you want to do is test them against the evidence and reject the ones that have very low confidence and hold provisionally to the ones that have high confidence. That's how phylogenetic trees work. If you're placing faith in a phylogenetic tree, you're doing science wrong. Also, why is this from 1995, man?
Because that's, hey, look, for them that's pretty recent. Creationists, they use old stuff. So 1995, that's pretty good.
They're still making arguments that were debunked in like 1870s.
Yeah.
I think that's
no one said they were right, but
well, I mean, no one except the other young Earth creationists.
Yeah.
Also, I love the degree to which they're struggling with the fact that a significant portion of their audience are becoming flat earthers. And for the exact same, theological reasons that they were young earthers in the first place. Which is just like, hey man, this is what it seems like the Bible says when you take it literally, and I'm just going to do that.
Which creationist was arguing with, the anti-vax creationists? Was it Sarfati?
Yeah, it was Sarfati, and just kind of broadly the CMI group.
That's just so deeply funny to me. Oh no, the consequences of our own actions of calling scientists liars for ever.
Mm-hmm. Rob Carter had also ran into that.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like,
so funny to me.
You guys,
all of our followers anti-vaxxers. Oh.
You're ignoring good science. You're not being real good scientists, and you got to trust all this. And everyone's like, oh, you're saying I should just trust big pharma? It's like, hey man, you know who trained your audience to be science deniers, right?
Yep.
It wasn't me. I didn't train your audience to be a science denier. Yeah, weird.
That's crazy, man.
And AIG just went headlong into vaccine denialism.
Have they?
I mean, they did. I don't know if they're still... They don't talk about it as much now, but they were like... They were opposing vaccine... Anything that came even close to a vaccine mandate. They were opposing.
Actually...
They were complaining about things like having vaccine requirements to attend meetings at businesses or to go to schools or to travel and things like that. And they were like, it was a horrible imposition. They're injecting untested vaccines into people. Which none of which is true.
I'm looking at their I don't see anything immediately on AIG.
Well, it's no longer a
wait.
hot button issue.
Oh, they don't even have anything about vaccinations on the COVID-19. Okay. Well, maybe I don't know if they deleted it or were like, or hid it or what, but I don't see anything on the
that
AIG page. So,
I think it's Pamela Ackerman, the Catholic young Earth creationist, has a
oh
whole book
God, I
about.
can't stand her.
Yeah, she has a whole book that's an anti-vax book on the basis that vaccines may have been developed in part using cells derived from fetal cell lines. And
Yeah,
therefore, if you take the vaccine, you're participating in baby murder.
I can't stand her. We watched a talk that she was in. I just like she's so just confident. She's so confidently ignorant about biology. It is
She's smug about
staggering.
it too.
Her and the other dude she's talking with, the guy who's like a self-described like high school dropout, which yeah, of course, who his background was it's got like Mary and it's surrounded by like clouds and birds, but it's AI generated. So
Ugh,
Mary has like a
gross.
pig snout, and the birds are like these little monsters. If you look at them closely,
Goodness, why?
I don't know. It was like, man, there are so many good pieces of art about the Virgin Mary. Why did you make an AI generated image?
It's
You
a
dummy.
genre that people have been using for like well over 1,000 years. There's so much great Christian art out there.
Right, exactly. I don't understand it. It was so bad.
Like
we made fun of it one video because we were just laughed at it.
That's painful. Harry Bronson from $5 says Paulo Gia had an amazing video on flat Earth versus young Earth. Yes, he did. I like that video. I don't think we're going to get the last 41 members in the next 5 or so minutes. So I don't think we're going to go on for that extra hour. But hey, you know what? We got 28 members, which means that we are that much closer. We only need 141 as of now. That is probably going to go up before the next stream. But I think we can do it. I think we can get a 25th emoji. I want to get a 25th emoji.
Pretty certain today also, even with the most up-to-date tree they've been able to produce. Next. Now, it's not just with human evolution. Look at what happened just this July of 2007.
Hey,
now we know exactly when this was.
Okay, so 2007.
Yeah.
Okay, fascinating. Many scientists have argued that early close relatives of dinosaurs must have disappeared abruptly in the early extinction by 10 50 million years ago. I'm not really familiar with.
Yeah, I've never heard that claim before.
Yeah, I've not heard of that one specifically. For reference for anyone who's aware, so the origin of dinosaurs occurred, or seems to have occurred somewhere between about 230 and 235 or so million years ago, during this time period known as the Carnian pluvial event.
So there are some 270 million year old fossils that are contenders for oldest dinosaur.
What do you say?
There are some 270 million year old fossils that are contenders.
Is it 270? That's like Permian.
I mean, I can double check, but last I saw, the earliest hypothetical, maybe, but I don't think that's actually true.
I mean that's Permian. From what I've seen, 230 to about 235 is when we have the earliest dinosaur fossils. So they seem to have arisen in this time period. They've descended from their common ancestor with like silosaurids, unless silosaurids are early ornithyscians.
Oh, you're right. I was doing math wrong. I'm sorry.
But so there was this really wet, like tropical kind of time period. That was that event, and so that was in the early Triassic, and that seems to have been when dinosaurs underwent a major radiation that resulted in like the early theropods, early sauropodomorphs, and then again it depends on whether or not silosaurids are early ornithyscians or not. The stuff I've seen most recently tends to group silosaurids as a paraphyletic grade of early ornithyscians, which is not super surprising to me because like there are basically no ornithyscians known from the Triassic other than like Pisanosaurus. So if the silosaurids were them, it's like, okay, well that explains where they went.
By the way, I do want to emphasize, when I said 270, that was me doing math in my head wrong. Jackson is
okay.
correct about 230 to 235, maybe 236-ish.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And so we have a bunch of dinosaur cousins. We have things like the Lagurpitids. There's things like a Teleocrator, which are more kind of stem-wise archosaurs. So we have a bunch of like archosaur cousins that are not that are like on the dinosaur side, but not dinosaurs themselves. Things like Euparkeria, stuff like that. So yeah, we got a
Even
bunch of
on
stuff.
the dinosaur side of the dinosaur-pterosaur split.
Yeah, it's like Marasuchus is one of those.
Yeah, we also have some things that are on this pterosaur side of the dinosaur-pterosaur split that aren't quite pterosaur. All right, though.
Like was Lagasuchus, I think.
Yep, Lagasuchus is probably the most
Yeah.
famous example. All right, though, it is time to start wrapping up. We have been going for about 2 hours now. So, Jackson, you have anything coming out in the next week or two?
I hope to get a video out titled "The War on Science" in the next week. Peter, my producer and co-host, made me a new intro.
Nice.
Because I will be doing a new sorts of videos on my channel in the near future. And I'm kind of excited about it. And so
cool.
we're still, of course, going to be going through the Ancestors' Tale. So the next Ancestors' Tale video, we just did the Jellyfish's Tale. The next one is the Polypifer's Tale, which is a fancy word for coral.
Okay.
And then that'll be the penultimate Animal Tale. And then there's only like, I think 8 or 9 videos left until we actually finish the whole series.
Nice.
So yeah, it's 59 video series.
Ooh.
Yeah, just a few. So yeah, I'm excited for the War on Science video because it's based on one of my favorite books about the history of science. Unfortunately, Lawrence Krauss, Richard Dawkins, Jerry Coyne, Steven Pinker, and a bunch of other like the anti-woke gang, whatever, recently just published a book titled The War on Science. So I'm sad because that means people are likely to see their book, which has that title, instead of the good book that has that title.
Yeah, that sucks.
Because they're going to argue that actually cancel culture and the transgenders are the reason that science is bad. Don't worry about the Republicans who are defunding science. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. That's obviously
it's the
not
transgenders.
something. Yeah, obviously. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so what's coming up on this channel? So, on Thursday, we've got Dumber Than Kent Hovind, Hovind X Biddle 2, where we are going to continue with Dan Biddle's appearance on Kent Hovind's show back before Kent Hovind got his channels nuked. It just keeps being stupid. Yeah, there's things in there that he says that even Kent Hovind is usually not. So, that is going to be on Thursday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Then on Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be doing the final episode of the Chariot of the Gods Alien TTRPG cinematic play scenario. Then on Saturday, here back on this channel at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be doing the next Dapper Reacts, which I believe should have both Vishanti and Kip there. We are coming in on the home stretch of the Bodhi Hodge Tower of Babel book. It has been amazingly done. And then next Tuesday should be Kent with Bent, I believe, number 160. And that'll be at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, which brings us a week out. So if you are, in fact, a member, you have access to the Discord server. And I'm going to be heading over there pretty soon to watch some Power Rangers Super Dino Charge, or Dino Super, something like that. The second season of Dino Charge. I hate the super convention. So yeah, we're going to watch 4 episodes of that. So come hang out with that if you want to watch some weird campy TV from like the 2010s. There you go. With that, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your night. Stay safe out there, and I will see you, hopefully, in a few days. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Van Tovend, Vilgevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, Strawberry Vein, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, Elleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostek von Mennen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, and Volus. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.